welcome to Forbidden Planet TV, and on today's episode we are joined by Eliza Chan to talk about FATHOMFOLK. Yay! Thanks so much for coming back.
Thank you for having me back.
To FP Towers. Obviously last time you were here we signed a ton of stock, but due to drilling noises and various other things going on we couldn't do the interview, so
We got here eventually.
Take two.
Yes.
So first of all, we have to say congratulations on your bestseller.
Thank you.
This is very exciting.
Still don't really believe it myself. Every time anyone says that, I'm like, who? Where's that bestseller? But thank you.
I suppose you can never really predict it's going to happen, but it must be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones where you hope, don't you? But then you're like, I don't want to count my chickens before it's hatched, and just calm down a minute. But I mean, the whole thing's been amazing. It's like a childhood dream to get a book published and then just to see it on the shelves, never mind everything else that's happened, has just been above and beyond, really.
So exciting. So for anyone out there who hasn't read this or hasn't heard of it yet,
how dare they?
How dare what can you tell us about it without too many spoilers?
Too many spoilers. Well, okay, my elevator pitch is, what if The Little Mermaid was a pissed off immigrant in a semi-submerged East and Southeast Asian inspired city, and it was never about the love of a man, it was about the love of her home. So it's basically set in a modernish sort of city where humans are literally at the top of towers, and the FATHOMFOLK are a range of mythological sea folk, from mermaids to kappas to kelpies to water dragons, and most of them have come to the city for various reasons, economic, or it's the immigrant experience, and it touches on things like discrimination, prejudice, race and class. But also, even though that sounds really dark and heavy, it's also about finding your home in a multicultural melting pot city that's full of people from different walks of life, and finding where you belong. And it follows three main characters who have very different personalities and decision making of this. So we've got a newly arrived water dragon who's a bit like a princess. She thinks she knows everything. We've got a half-siren who's a bit more grounded but is being like worn down by the system, but is trying to fight her way from the inside and working up her way up through the military. And then we've got a sea witch who does not play by anyone's rules, because why should she? She's a sea witch.
She's a sea witch. I was going to ask this later, but I'm going to ask this now. Yes. Was there a particular favourite character of yours to write? Like whenever you came back to...
Yeah, it changed actually. So originally it was Mira, who's the half-siren, who's very sort of lawful good. I'm going to do it. I'm going to show them that we're better than they think we are. Who's a lovely character and probably the one I would be friends with in real life. But actually on edits it became the sea witch because she was fun. Like I definitely now get when people say it's fun to write villains and it's fun to write people that don't actually follow your moral compass in real life. They just break the rules and they're a bit sneaky. I also just think sea witches get a bad rep, In The Little Mermaid, she was just making some deals. It was not her fault that The Little Mermaid didn't read the small print,
Yeah, fair enough. You're on the side of the sea witch.
Yes, turns out, yes.
Did you find it difficult kind of dealing with multiple POVs? Like do sometimes the characters kind of run away a bit or you were just like, where's that person? Where did I just leave that character? Or did you kind of find it easy to float between?
I wouldn't say it was easy, but I would say it was a necessity of this novel. It actually started as one POV, and I realised I couldn't tell the story I wanted to tell because I wanted to show that not all FATHOMFOLK are the same, and that was really hard to show through one POV, so that's why it became a multi-POV. I think that made it a lot more interesting to show different sides of the city. There were points that I was like, they should probably be in the same room at some point. And I did have to sort of like ram that in a little bit to be like, come on, they need to meet. So those bits, but generally I found it really interesting to try out. I've never written multiple POV before, and I liked it more than I thought I would.
And do you have, like, obviously prior to this, have you had spoken about this to a few authors before where they've had the other books that are now in their sock drawer and they pretend don't exist? Do you have such a such a thing?
We don't have these soft books. I'm an interesting case, I would say. So I did write a book between the ages of like 16 to 21, which will never see the light of day. It was absolute drivel. And at the time I kind of knew, and I had a writing group I was in Glasgow, and I showed it to them. They were very nice and gave me feedback, and some of their feedback was, why don't you keep writing? And a lot of them are writing short fiction. So I ended up in this cul-de-sac of going, well, I'll write some short fiction, I'll get better. And I think it did get better, but then I sort of kept almost in this comfort zone of short fiction, of like being too fearful to try the novel again because I knew that one was bad. So I never properly finished another novel until this one, but I did keep writing that whole time.
Well, we're glad you came back. So you mentioned before about the kind of the different cultures and different mythologies, and this is just such a great kind of melding pot of like all of those things. Like, how did you, like, where did the research start for those, or was it kind of sort of tales and mythologies you were already somewhat familiar with, or how did that all?
It was a bit of a mix. So I generally really like mythology, so I tend to read a lot of mythology books, and especially if I went on a holiday anywhere, I'd like to try and pick up something local, see what was going on. And I think in my head, I don't know how this idea of sea-based mythology having this parallel to the immigrant experience, coming over the waves to a new country, sort of got into my head. I think in terms of my other point of research, I guess, was I wanted to talk about multicultural cities that weren't necessarily based on London or New York, which is always the ones that you kind of see in Hollywood. It's multicultural, must be London and New York. And I'd done a lot of traveling, and I'd lived overseas, and I was like, like Delhi's multicultural, Singapore's multicultural, Hong Kong it's a different sort of mix to what you see in the Hollywood films, but it is still multicultural. So I very much wanted to show that. And I think those two ideas sort of mashed together in my head.
I think it just sounds so easy.
12 drafts later. It got there.
So coming back to the characters, I always love kind of seeing sibling relationships, and obviously seeing the kind of sisters dynamic. So was that fun to write for you?
Yeah, so in my book, the siblings are Kai, who's a water dragon, and his little sister Nami. And I enjoyed that because I very much liked, I don't have any brothers, and I think I like this idea of having this older brother that's sort of like sensible head on him. While Nami is the sort of chaotic, younger, impulsive one. But I also wanted to build this sort of sisterly relationship she makes throughout the novel with Mira, who is Kai's girlfriend, because I miss seeing female friendships often in fantasy. You either see antagonistic, there's some that are sapphic, which is great, but I just wanted to see a platonic friendship grow. So that was in the back of my head when I was writing that.
Yeah, it's really nice to kind of see those female friendships, I think, like you said, and it is something I think it needs to happen more. I think we need more of just girls just finding their people. And maybe it's just something, as you get older, obviously so many of us, Forbidden Planet and further afield, grew up as geeks and quite solitary, so it's so lovely when you kind of like meet people as you get older and you're just like, hey, you're
yeah, exactly. And I think we maybe, again, similar, we probably grew up on this, there were strong female characters, but they were always the one, and they were in the boys club, and you're like, well, actually most of my friendships are not like that. You're not the one, as you say, you find your other geek friends, female or male or whatever gender, and you all bond together. So it's nice that I could do that, and there are other authors out there sort of bringing that to the fore.
Yes, no, definitely. And obviously having like the third person like POV is slightly more kind of unusual. Why did you kind of go down that?
What do you mean with
with the I suppose, well, there's always an argument, isn't there, like writing first person, second person, like whether you choose to kind of be in the kind of character's place or whether you're kind of watching was there any kind of reason why you kind of...
think I've just in my head was like fantasy is third person. And I guess, yeah, if I was sticking to one POV, I might have done first, because that's a lot closer, isn't it? But I don't know. It's maybe the I've done second person stuff in short fiction, but I think I'm most comfortable in third person. Yeah, singular for the moment.
For the moment.
Might write a novel in second person plural. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, and there is quite a nice kind of dynamic and almost kind of filmic quality to it as well, which I very much enjoy. So.
And I think like the nice thing about getting a bit of feedback about the book is a lot of people have said the city itself feels like a character.
Yes.
And I guess that having the third person POV sort of pulls it out a little bit and has the breathing space to be like, yes, it's also about the city. You know, as a creature, as a sort of living, breathing entity in a way. Yeah,
because it was kind of like, not obviously thematic wise, but City of Stardust, which was one of my favourite books in January. Just the whole city kind of feeling like you said, like a character that's alive, and you're kind of watching them develop in a way. It's really, really interesting. So coming towards the end of the interview, so I was going to say about the conflict between kind of the humans and the FATHOMFOK. Kind of is how kind of interesting was that to write, and is that kind of I suppose looking at bigger issues in society?
Yeah, obviously there's parallels because it is very much a modern cityscape, so there's parallels to what's happening in the real world, what's happening in recent history in terms of how we treat asylum seekers, immigrants, migrants, and how they're sort of vilified often by the media. So I did want to touch on that, but I didn't want to make it a one for one analogy, because I mean it is fantasy, and I feel like if I'd gone for a one for one, people would be like, so what's the answer then? And a couple of people have gone, well, where's the answer? I'm like, if I had the answer, I would hopefully be leading the country and making everything lovely. Unfortunately, what I was hoping for this was to ask the questions, and to ask the questions of how far do you go to try and change something that's broken, but also, it's home for them. So yes, it's broken. We've got to the point where you could, like things come out from the past of history of what's happened in the city, but how do we move forward is my question, because I think we can end up dwelling in that past and getting angry about that, but the people have to live in it now, and it's very much about these three or main characters, but everyone having a different point of view of how to move forward. And I'm not necessarily saying one is better or right, I'm just saying here's some questions. Go to your book group and discuss, because I don't think there's an easy answer, and I don't think the characters find an easy answer in this, but that's what I want. I want people to talk about it, and I want people to think about those sort of themes in fantasy as well, and think about moving forward ourselves from the traditional sort of epic fantasy. It's very Eurocentric to there are different ways to write it, and this is just one idea of, I'm sure everyone has many ideas of other ways to approach it too.
Well, we obviously have to kind of comment again, such a wonderful book, and what are you working on next?
I'm working on the sequel.
Ah.
So yes, it's a duology, so book 2 hopefully will be out next year, but I'm doing the edits on that now, and we'll see how that goes, but it's looking all right.
Good. And to finish off, what are you currently reading, watching, and if you game, what are you playing?
Okay, so reading, I'm reading Mina Ikimoto Goshi's Hayo the Hellmaker, which is an illustrated YA, which is...
It looks beautiful. I haven't read it yet,
I've never read anything like it before, because illustrated for one, so it's not a manga, it's actually like a YA just with a lot of illustrations, based in Japanese sort of mythology, but it's almost like a murder mystery is how I would describe it. It's very interesting. I'm halfway through it and I'm intrigued, and Mina's an artist as well as the author, so she's done everything including the cover. Cool. I'm watching The Three Body Problem. Of interest. I've never actually read the novel. I'm quite intimidated by like hard science fiction, but I love watching it because I think it's more accessible, so I'm intrigued. but I'm gonna hold my opinion until I get to the end. And gaming, sadly, I do not game. I'm sorry. I mean, a tabletop game.
Oh, hey.
But I'm not a computer gamer. I was the kid that used to watch over someone's shoulder screaming, "No, he's gonna die!" And I think the fear of holding that controller myself, and also like the level games have got so difficult now because I haven't done it since PlayStation 1. But yes, that's why.
PS1 vibes.
PS1, Final Fantasy 7 and 8. That's where I am.
Yeah, I many fond memories. Like that was my first. Well, it was my brother's, and then he went off to college, and then it became my PlayStation. So yeah, very.
We bought, I think it was like the first Resident Evil, me and my sister. We tried to play it. We were so scared that we made my dad play it. He couldn't play computer games. He was just in a wall as zombies were eating us, and we took the game back to the shop. That's the level. I'm too scared to play it. That's the level of my gaming. I'm very embarrassed. A lot of it looks amazing, and I'd love to get into it, but yeah.
Wow, there's still time.
There's
a game for everyone out there. But thank you, Eliza, for joining us today. We have still got some signed stock in the stores, and we can obviously hustle some more as well at some point. But thank you so much for joining us today, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.